The greatest danger to our planet is the belief that someone else will fix it. Those words from Robert Swan. Welcome to Morning Coffee Guest. I'm your host, Simone Absalom Gale. We meet our guests after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Morning Coffee Guest. I'm your host, Simone Absalom Gale. Joining us in studio are Dr. Andrea Clayton, Principal Lecturer of Sustainable Development at the Caribbean Maritime University, Jamaica, and Abigail Wright, Earth Ambassador, Vice President and Chief Administrator for the Junior Ambassador Program. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
All right, I'll start first with Dr. Clayton. Where did your love for maritime and sustainable development come from? When did you start getting interested in those areas?
It actually started out as a concern for the environment. In 2017, when I started working with the Caribbean Maritime University, I would be driving into the campus, and after every heavy rainfall, you would see the garbage in the harbor. And that's when my first concern started. And then in 2019, I became a fellow with the Association of Commonwealth University and was stationed, or I worked with the Dalhousie University in Halifax. So when I went to Halifax and I saw the work that they were doing from a university's perspective, how they were impacting their communities from the bottom up, I came back with the commitment that we needed to do something similar here in Jamaica. And a part of my fellowship was to look at the level of knowledge that existed among young people in particular as it pertains to the environment and how they felt about being a part of the change. And one of the things that came out of that research paper is the lack of ownership that they felt. And that was primarily because they felt like they were having to do it alone. And so we recognized the need for a community-based approach to environmental stewardship, which is why part of what the Earth Ambassadors is about is building that community of environmental stewards.
Well, I've seen that you've done, in addition to that, you've had several publication and research. What drives the passion for that part of your work?
Well, one of the things that we say as ambassadors is that research is our sauce. We don't do anything without it being guided by research. We don't believe that our actions should just be emotionally driven. It should be informed. And that's the role that the research that we do play. Having undertaken the research, then we take the findings and the recommendations and then we implement them. And one of that is the Junior Ambassadors program you referenced. Abigail is leads that program. That actually came out again out of the research that we were doing.
So, Abigail, if someone were to ask, who are Earth Ambassadors, how would you respond?
All right, so Earth Ambassadors, so we are a voluntary-based organization. We try to get communities, individuals, schools more knowledgeable about how we treat the environment. We should rethink our ways towards the environment. And we also have our 7 R's, the proper waste management, which we try to tell people about. For example, rethink, recycle, repurpose, reflect. So we try to tell them about it so they also know about the impacts that we are currently doing that is currently affecting us and how to solve it.
All right, so you're an administrator for the Junior Ambassadors. Tell me about the Junior Ambassadors program.
All right, so the Junior Ambassadors program primarily focuses on students in the grades 2 and grade 3, grade 2 being level 1 and grade 2 being level 1 and grade 3 being level 2. So for grades 2, we basically teach them about the earth or protecting the earth environment, and level 2, grades 3 basically rethinking plastic. We have the pilot program actually started out with 4 schools, but we have only 3 active schools now. In St. Mary, we have Liberty Learning Center. Here in Kingston, we have Emmanuel Christian Academy, and in St. Catherine, we have the Tullow Primary. 2 urban, 2 rural, 2 privately funded, 2 publicly funded.
Okay, and I want to know though, why did you get involved? Because you're a university student.
Graduate.
You're a university graduate, sorry.
Yeah.
So why did you get involved in the program yourself?
Right, so my degree is in shipping and logistics, knowing that we want our goods to get from point A to point B, and it is a growing sector, and mobility is important. And of course, it contributes, for example, the vehicles, the ships which the goods have to be transported with, it contributes to greenhouse gases. Of course, it causes impacts such as aforementioned, greenhouse gases, pollution, noise. So how it connects is that you need people like myself to educate others about the impacts that we're currently causing to the environment.
Very well said. Dr. Clayton, I keep hearing this term, blue economy. What does that mean? And how does that fit into the whole program in terms of being environmental activists?
As I mentioned earlier, my first concern started with what was happening in the harbor. Jamaica, countries like Jamaica, small island states, islands, we are particularly dependent on the coastal, the ocean, with a significant portion of our population actually living in coastal areas. And so whether or not we're aware of it, we were already including the blue economy in what we were doing, in fishing, in tourism. All of that is dependent on the ocean. And that is really what the blue economy is about. And the idea that if we don't live beside the ocean, we're not a part of the ocean is actually something that I have realized that some persons don't make that connection. But you live in Blue Mountain, and the river travels down to the ocean. And so a farmer in Blue Mountain is actually impacting what happens in the ocean. The wrong fertilizer affects the water system, and it gets into the marine environment. We're seeing a challenge right now with sargassum in the region that is impacting our tourism.
What's sargassum? Sorry, for our viewers, not for me.
It's weeds. It's those brown things that you'll see on the beach when you get there. It's polluting the coastal regions, and hotels and governments are having to spend a lot of money trying to remove it because we're so dependent on tourism, fishing, all those industries that our GDP relies on.
Exactly.
So in island states like ours, everybody is a part of the blue economy.
So what kind of activities can I look forward to if I join the Earth Ambassadors group?
Well, as Abigail mentioned earlier, we're a volunteer organization. So we're always looking for people who are passionate about the environment. We want to educate. So our first R is to rethink, and our final R is to reflect. The first of the 7 is to rethink, and the 7th is to reflect. And part of our process is really getting people to understand, to educate, and to change behavior, because policy alone cannot work. So the top-down approach we've seen alone in itself does not work. You do need a bottom-up approach, which is what the Earth Ambassadors does. If you become a part of it, then we have our social media platform. We have the Junior Ambassadors program, which is the flagship program. The pilot is currently running, as Abigail said, in the 3 schools. And so we're looking for persons to be a part of that. We also have a number of schools who have shown interest, but because it's a volunteer organization, we're having to introduce the program in different schools, because we would love to have more volunteers to be able to do all that we would like to do.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but the schools that we currently have on board, they're very committed to the process, and the other schools that are aware of the program somewhere else now are showing interest, and that we actually have 3 or 4 schools now that we've asked to allow us to start in September because we don't have the personnel right now. So we'd love to have someone like you on board.
No, we'll talk off air. But if I have my viewers now who want to join, who want to become volunteers and educate the wider public, especially our youth, which I think is a good idea. Start from they're young. How do I get in contact with you? How do I join?
We have a website, earthambassadors.org. The membership form is there. You click on, you can read up about the organization and then you can apply. The links are there. We have social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Yeah. I see you're looking over there to your younger cohort. Okay, Abigail, tell us about these social media platforms. What's the name? When you're saying social media platforms, you have to say, okay, our Instagram handle is this and whatnot. Let us know.
Right. So our Instagram handle is @EarthAmbassadeurs. Facebook, it's @EarthAmbassadors. TikTok, also @EarthAmbassadors. And you can also find us on YouTube. At Earth Ambassadors. We're kindly asking you to come out, visit our page, like our videos, and subscribe at Earth Ambassadors. Thank you.
All right, like, share, and subscribe.
Yes.
All right.
Volunteer.
That is true. That is true. Ensure that you volunteer to keep our earth and our environment healthy and clean for future generation, right? Remember that the sea is an underwater museum still awaiting its visitors. If we don't keep it clean, we'll have nowhere to visit. Stay with us. We have more in Morning Coffee Guest. Welcome back to PBCJ's Morning Coffee Guest. I'm your host, Simone Absalom Gale. Dr. Andrea Clayton, who is the founder of Earth Ambassadors, is joined by author, journalist, and environmentalist Melvin Pennant. Thanks so much for agreeing to speak with us, Mr. Pennant.
Thanks for having me.
I'm starting off with Dr. Clayton. Tell me about the spelling of the word ambassadors in your title, Earth Ambassadors. It's spelled differently.
It's actually the French for ambassador. The simple story is ambassador in English was taken. Earth Ambassador, there's actually an existing organization with the ambassador spelled as we do in the English. So we put a little twist to it and gave it a French flair.
Yes, made it unique.
Yes.
Made it your own. So when persons are looking for the social media handles, it's AMBASSADEURS.
That's correct.
All right, everyone. We'll go over to Mr. Pennant. You're an environmentalist. How did you learn, though, about the group?
Okay, so also a journalist. I do a lot of work for NSWMA, and this particular thing, they were doing a plastic minimization project in Raytown, and I came across Andrea, which I've known a long time. Didn't know she was a lecturer and was so big in environmentalist. And I take a liking to what they introduced me to, and I decided to say, you know what? It's not a big deal to just get on board with this group, and started to, journal what they were doing, because I think it was very important. Growing up in Clarendon, yes, I'm a rural guy. Growing up in Clarendon, I used to watch this particular cartoon called Captain Planet.
Yes, I remember Captain Planet.
He's a hero, yes. So, and I like the term cleanliness is next to godliness. I've always liked, especially when I travel to Canada, oh my, the place is clean, and I'm saying, I would love for our streets to be clean. You rarely see littering. And I say, you know what, I want to be a part of this thing, and I am going to dive in full force.
It's interesting that you say that it's based also on your experience traveling abroad. That leads me into a topic that I really want to delve into, which is climate change. A lot of countries are talking about it. It's a big issue. But for our audience, first I want to define the term. Dr. Clayton, would you mind defining climate change?
The simplest way is the changing of our climate, not weather, the changing of our climate that is assessed over a period of time. And this period of time could be 3 months, 3 years, 300 years. When you talk to the average farmer, in Jamaica, they will know that something is happening, but they won't know the term climate change. And when you're in our research, when you're talking to them now, you're helping them to understand that is what is really happening. The climate is changing. You're seeing drought, you're seeing more torrential rains, you're seeing more storms. When I say to my students that before Hurricane Gilbert, I had never seen a hurricane, and many people had never seen a hurricane. But now, every child knows about hurricanes.
And you're seeing a lot more burnt leaves on the farms. You know, crops are dying before time.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. So that's what's happening, and I believe that's how you can really embody it in the Jamaican experience to help us understand. And of course, we're going to tie all of that in with your drive for ending plastic pollution. Going down into that, though, Mr. Pennant, some environmentalists would say developments or infrastructures that's being developed is being done at a great sacrifice to our environment. Your take on that?
Okay, so we cannot knock development because development is the world all over. But yes, an approach has to be taken to ensure that development done correctly, properly, will not harm the future. Because, for instance, we're now putting up a lot of buildings, a lot of high-rise buildings in Kingston. If we're going to look like New York in the near future, do we have the amenities to address the amount of people that we're going to be catering for in that cramped space? Because whether you like it or not, where you have more people, you're going to have more disposals. And are we taking care of our disposals properly? So those are the things that we have to look at.
Dr. Clayton, your opinion on the change, moving from certain developments, you know, being on a lower scale to heading into a more urban-like development in Kingston and across the island. You're seeing a lot of infrastructures, more living spaces, more residential spaces being built. Your take on that and its impact on the Jamaican environment?
There is the concept of sustainable cities that we have to start looking at. As Melvin just pointed out, you can't have development without being mindful of the implications. And yes, development is necessary. And usually when persons talk about environmentalism, they believe that we're saying stop development and protect the trees and protect the animals.
Yes.
But no, what we're saying is you can have development alongside environmental protection. Traditional societies did that. Traditional indigenous societies learned to live with their environment and progressed. But what we have done is we've sacrificed the environment for developmental growth. And there's the concept of weak sustainability versus strong sustainability. And the idea that natural capital and man-made capital are substitutable. And that's the model that we've been using. So we've been using man-made capital, money, and buildings to replace natural capital. And what we're saying for strong sustainability is that you need to recognize them as complements. So they can work together. We need sustainable cities. You need cities where you don't have to be traveling all that distance to get to work. You need to be able to consider the infrastructure, as he mentioned. Is there water for all the high-rise buildings that are being put in? How are we going to treat with the waste that is generated? So all of this needs to be a part of the development conversation before we simply address one problem and create more.
That really reminds me of an issue that we constantly have in Kingston, the Marcus Garvey Drive. I was speaking, I was speaking, you know, to a researcher, and he was linking it to farming in the upper hills of St. Andrew. A lot of persons don't make the connection that farming and waste like plastic use, stuff that you use from the farm, the homes from in the hills, and how it can affect the water coming down, leading onto Marcus Garvey Drive. Can you explain, you were speaking and tying it into the whole sustainability issue?
Everything is connected. And that's one of the the things that we have to get persons to understand. And that's one of the reasons why we start the Junior Ambassadors program, just allowing students to see the connection humans have with the earth and how everything in the earth is connected. And as we live on an island, the terrain, we start off higher in the hills and we get down to the coast. We have rivers running from inland coming out to the coast. We have water channels, all the water channels leading out into the coast. So everything that someone does that leads into the water channel, that leads into the river, will get into our ocean. That is why Abigail mentioned earlier about the 4 schools that we selected for the initial pilot. We did that because we chose 2 schools that were coastal, so they were very clear, they could see the impact, and then we chose 2 schools that were inland, that they were along a water channel, and some of the activities actually have them watching to see what happens to their debris. And so whether it is fertilizer or it is actual litter that you can see, it does affect the quality of our coastal region. And as a country that is so dependent on tourism, that is something that we have to start thinking about. We even have to start thinking about the model of tourism that we offer. You mentioned climate change earlier. With the sea levels predicted to rise, that has implications for our beaches. We're already seeing it in Hellshire. We're seeing it across the island. You go to Negril, you're seeing it. So how are we going to continue to develop at the same time protecting what we have here?
And what you're proposing is to start with the youth, of course. Let's discuss. You spoke about our coastline. One area of our coastline that is being developed right now, our coastline, is the downtown Kingston waterfront. Any words of caution, Melvin? Melvin, let's start with you. Well, your word of caution to the authorities when they're planning this development.
Listen, I don't want you to let the authority start singling me.
But you're a Jamaican, you must have some thoughts, I hope that
I am going to be,
I hope that I'm not seeing this or,
No. But the development of the waterfront is a good thing. It's a good thing. Actually, what they're doing now, it's because it's not late, or it's better late than never. But things like this should have happened. Like, for instance, we always have storms. And what they did at the airport with those boulders, it's a good initiative. The truth be told is, we have not seen a magnitude like what probably the Tahitian people do see in terms of whirlwind and tsunamis, And if you visit Hellshire Beach, one of our most popular beach, we probably need to drop the beach because there's no more beach. The water is pretty much in the shops, and people have to be building out. I wrote a letter some time ago. I don't think this one was published, but I wrote it to several prime ministers about some of the things that a lot of coastal countries are doing, which is those used cars, those scrap metals. What they can do is get rid of all the contaminants in it, clean them up, and meaning get rid of the paints and stuff like that, weld them together and bring them out and make reefs. We have to start looking at things like that to make man-made reefs to cut down on the sea level coming in, because like Dr. Clayton said, the sea will rise and the coastal fronts are eroding day by day, and we have to put in something to stem that tide.
That's true. And one of the types of waste that we're really having a problem with is plastic. Our planet is drowning in plastic pollution. That's also affecting our coastal areas. That is a byline also in a publication by UNEP. The publication says that while plastic has many valuable uses, we have become addicted to single use of disposable plastic with severe environmental consequences. Now, around the world, 1 million plastic drinking bottles are purchased every minute, while 5 trillion single-use plastic bags are used worldwide every year. In total, half of all plastic produced is designed to be used only once and then thrown away. Dr. Clayton, what's so dangerous about this situation?
Plastic is just one of those products along this linear production model that we have used since the Industrial Revolution. And this is the idea that we extract, we make, we use, and we discard. And once we're not seeing it, we believe that it is gone, it's no longer here. But you know, more and more you're seeing images of plastic in the ocean islands and so on, the plastic islands and so on. And plastic, not just as a product, because when persons see the actual plastic bottle, it triggers, you know, when we see the garbage, it triggers something in you. But even as a product that we use, when we were growing up, you get a bag and you go to the supermarket or you go to the market. But we have generations that have been raised in this idea of discarding everything. Even plastic is in our clothes. Plastic is in our makeup, microbeads. Plastic is everywhere. It's in the food that we're eating, so it has health implications. So it is not just the aesthetics, the waste that you see out there. It is in everything, and we're seeing even babies in the umbilical cord. They're actually finding plastic there. So your child is now being born with plastic in their bodies. We do not know yet the long-term implications health-wise, but we do know that we can anticipate that there will be some problems there. So why plastic is a problem that has to be addressed, and which is why we, for the Junior Ambassadors program, for the level 2, we spend that entire year in the school talking about plastic. It has to be a mind shift change. Yes, we've banned the plastic bags and the single-use items, but we all know that you can go out there and get it. I went to a restaurant, a well-known restaurant in this country, and I got straws. And I was like, isn't this banned? Yeah, yeah, plastic. And then the other problem is that many of the things that we have introduced as substitutes for the plastic that we've banned, while the original plastics that we're banning could have been recycled, these things that we're replacing them with can't be recycled. So we live in a country where globally the recycle level is low, but it's even lower in Jamaica. And what we're getting to substitute for the plastic, they're not sustainable either. So our problems with plastic will not just be solved with the legislation. We have to change the behavior of the people. It has to be driven by a group of people for change.
Speaking of people driven, this is where I get to Mr. Pennant. You have done a documentary focused on that, public education on the problem that we have with plastic and plastic pollution, and we have a little bit of a highlight for you right now. Take a look.
Most plastic is made from fossil fuels, gas or oil, which are refined into ethane and propane, which are then heat treated to turn them into ethylene and propylene. Every stage requires a lot of energy, so about 6% of the world's consumption of fossil fuels is used to make plastics.
Plastic is a problem from its cradle to its grave. This versatile, convenient, inexpensive product is one of global warming's worst enemy. At conception, its main ingredients are pulled from freshly extracted fossil fuels in oil refineries and gas processing plants. Naphtha, a crude oil-based substance, and ethane, a liquid natural gas.
Our consumption of plastics is increasing. Of all the plastic that has ever been made, over half was produced in the last 15 years, and almost none of that, not even 10%, has been recycled.
Be sure to watch the documentary in its entirety on their social media pages. Mr. Pennant, you had something to add though.
Oh, just the documentary. I'm not the one. Actually, Earth Ambassadors is responsible for the documentary, so I'm really appreciative of being recognized as the one. I mean, that's a big deal, you know, but it's Earth Ambassadors.
It was
and
a team
I work
effort.
alongside with them. Yes.
All right, I want to thank you so much for coming into studio. This has been very informative and educational, and continue to keep up the good work with the Earth Ambassadors. Dr. Clayton.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to the support of the audience in our beach cleanup activities and all the initiatives that we'll be putting forward this year.
All right, as we end the conversation, we can say that we've learned about responsible consumption, planning, and preservation, which is key to protecting the environment. This has been another interesting and informative episode of Morning Coffee Guest. Thanks for watching.